So plants are comprised of literally thousands of chemicals, and we haven't even really begun to understand all that the plants have. And many of those chemicals are, of course, most of them, just like our own chemicals that comprise us, are essential for the life force of the plant. Like there are aromatic oils in the plants that emit that gorgeous smell that we think is so beautiful, and just for us is a protection. Oftentimes it's a seduction for the plants. It's a way they attract their pollinators to them. The colors that look so beautiful, oftentimes, again, that's developed so that they can attract certain types of pollinators to them. The resins that the plants have, that's also immune and immune protective. But there are some chemicals in the plant, and sometimes excessive amounts of these, that they can't figure out why they're in the plant, like what component they have in the plant. And yet oftentimes those components are exactly work on stimulating our immune system, are feeding our nervous system. And I think, again, in my worldview, I think the plants, many of them are healing plants. Like just like in our communities of people, we have people who are naturally healers. Maybe from the time they were young children, they wanted to be a doctor or an herbalist or a nurse or a massage therapist. They're just drawn to helping other people. Or a firefighter, somebody who wants to go out and put their life on the line for other people. So we see that in our human communities, and I see it in the plant communities. There's certain plants that are the shamans of their own communities, and those plants often have more medicine than they need. That medicine then becomes exactly what our bodies need. So again, it's that energetic relationship. It's that long evolvement with the plants and our dependency on them. And really, until very recently in history, I mean, it's not even been more than a few hundred years, our primary medicine was dependent on the plants and our primary food. So we're talking about really eons of time, in relationships. So it's not an unusual thing. They have their own personalities. I mean, they are living beings. And medicine people, which would be called shamans or herbalists or the medicine person of the village, they always worked with the energetic of plants. It's only been in recent times that people are isolating chemicals and using things that are innate substances to heal people. So almost all medicine people were using the whole energetics of the plant. And in my belief system, those plants have a higher consciousness. They have their own life form, that they have their own reason for being here. It's not the same as ours. And we all are connected in that great cosmic way. So plants have a direct link with the environment that's around them. And when we use those plants, just by ingesting them, it helps to expand our awareness of what's around us. And to put it in more common terms, it's like you can hardly take a walk in the woods. Like we look at these beautiful woods, and the very first thing I did when I landed here was say hi to you, and then I went for a quick walk in the woods, because walking into that woods elevates me. And I'm not drinking anything. I didn't have a cup of tea. I didn't have a tincture. I didn't have a pill. I just went out there because I can absorb my consciousness, travels outside of myself and feels at one with the consciousness around me. And I think that's one of the greatest tonics that we have, is the tonic of nature. In fact, John Muir said that we need the tonic of the wilderness. I think it's one of the reasons that we are so stressed out, and I haven't mentioned this before, is it's our disconnect from nature and the higher consciousness, and that awareness that we are one part of a greater being that we've been disconnected from. And we definitely see that in our children. I mean, you can go down City Park, drive down a city, and you hardly see children out playing anymore. They're all disconnected, even from the outside, even from their big parks that they put in there. So there's no communion with that greater force. And here when I talk about communion or a greater spirit, I'm not talking about, getting on our knees necessarily and praying. It's just conscious awareness that our being has, our pores reach out. And the more we cultivate that, the more at one we feel with it. And the more at one we feel with everything, the less anxious we are about what's going on in the world today. The less anxious we are about all the things that we can't control. And that's the way, I think that's the greatest way to engage with the plants, really. We see it in a more simpler form when you go out in your garden. You have a little plot, and I would say you never see a grumpy gardener. They might be grumpy when they're trying to pull their weeds, and get their garden calmed down in the early spring. But as soon as they work out there, they start to be at peace, right? And they start to look around at the green and the flowers, and they're almost happier being in a garden. And so there's an energetic, we could call it a spiritual relationship that's happening between the people and the plants. And how does that help our anxiety? It just helps us feel more in control of ourselves and more centered. I just think it's Yeah, we need the tonic of the wilderness. Thank you, John Muir.
Yeah, I tell my students, if you can boil a pot of water and make ramen noodles, then you can make any preparation of herbs on the planet. And it's just about courage and trying it and having a good recipe, like from Rosemary's books are some of the most time-tested and accessible recipes I'm aware of. And it's just like becomes a part of your daily practice. It becomes a habit. It becomes part of what you do when you're making breakfast in the morning or getting ready for bed at night. So it's definitely because we've lost the lineage of herbalism in most of our families on a personal level, it can feel kind of intimidating. But I think Rosemary herself has done a great job of demystifying these preparations in mass, and especially something that Rosemary and I both emphasize is working with herbs that are tonic in nature. So as I mentioned, not going to the California poppy first, but starting with the chamomile. And if we're working with the more nutritive, nourishing, tonic, gentle herbs to start, then it's okay if our dosage is a little off. It's okay if we are experimenting and try this or that, because these are herbs that are essentially in the same category as food. It's like a glorified salad. So always when folks are starting new in herbalism, I recommend things like teas and infusions because they are really simple, and starting with those tonic herbs so that they can feel comfortable that it's safe, whether it's for themselves or their family, that these herbs are just the same as the food in our garden. And it's just about, getting comfortable with them and reconnecting. Most of us had grandmothers or great-grandmothers that this was second nature for them. And I think it's really beautiful as herbalism is becoming more prominent in this country in the mainstream that we're not only bringing these practices back into our life, but also connecting with our history and our heritage as a part of that.